name is Bryant, and I'll be acting as your facilitator for today's courageous conversation. Now, you may be justly asking the question, what is a courageous conversation? Well, let me start out by stating the obvious. We live in an incredibly divided time, both politically and socially. Folks are tired of coming together to this philosophical middle ground and explaining their experiences to one another. We've seen conversations like this delve into chaos, such as in the 2020 presidential election. People are tired and scared of sharing their opinions due to fear of being not accepted. At Share Your Voice, we thought there was genuine potential for these conversations, for these hard, difficult, courageous conversations. That having them, that sharing our voices and sharing our opinions is valuable. And that these conversations would make a difference. All right, so first we're gonna go over our group norms. Firstly, as a group, I want us to understand that not only are we gonna take up space with our voices like I'm doing right now, we're also gonna make space for others' opinions. And that means not shutting someone down immediately when they have the opposite viewpoint as us. But we're gonna make room for others to be able to speak and let their opinions be heard. Secondly, we're going to respect each other's boundaries. Some things we don't feel comfortable saying, and some things we don't feel comfortable hearing. And so I'm going to jump down to number 4, which kind of goes to oops and ouch. So if you feel some of that coming on, someone is encroaching on your boundaries, you might want to say, oops, I'm sorry I hurt you. Ouch, that hurt because of this. The reason we do that, we don't want it to devolve into a lack of productivity. So we're going to respect oops and ouch. Also, we're going to respect one mic, and that's kind of hard over Zoom, obviously. But when one person's talking, we try and refrain from having other people talking. And finally, we're going to participate, engage in the conversation, and encourage one another. Today, we'll be discussing media bias. I have a few pieces of art and a few images I'd like to share, and I'd love to get your first impressions. What are some instances in which you think the media has contributed to an inaccurate narrative?
Okay, I think there's an inaccurate portrayal. I feel like it's pretty prevalent, but towards people in the African American community, just because over social media, there's a lot of stuff that is portrayed about. There's a lot of behavioral things that's portrayed about Black people that makes all of Black people look bad. So when people only see the bad that people do, then they start to say, oh, then that whole community as a whole is like this, or yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is more of like a broad understanding and not more of a specific pinpoint like that. But just like how it connects with the quote that you showed us from Malcolm X, that let's say somebody in the hyper partisan right over here is covering something in the news, and then we see the same exact thing from the hyper partisan left, and it's completely different. You can make the bad guy the good guy, the good guy the bad guy. And I feel like in today's day and age, no one can truly get a true understanding of the situation, because obviously, like, we can't go interview the people who lived into it, and even they themselves have like bias as to what happened. And I just feel like the media completely changes everything, and at the end of the day, that's how we become so divided. And it's because we all get different sides of the story and then preach it to others as the truth.
I think it has to go with like pretty much any stereotype or any type of news story. You got guys like Fox 2, for example, who is primarily a very right-wing news, and they twist the stories to make it appeal to their audience, appeal to the right-wing guys. And then you got guys like CNN who twist it a different way and add little bits more details here and there, takes out some details here and there to make it more appeal to their audience. But neither one of them give the full story, word for word, no, non-biased, like they were both saying, not even just with race, but with pretty much anything nowadays. Anything that happens on social media or the news or any type of outlet that people get to see, everybody wants to twist it to make sure that people agree with them and they can draw in the views so they can get their money, get their clout, whatever they're chasing. They just want to twist it so they get whatever they get out of it.
And I think to add on to what you said, Matt, the problem with that is that people will see anything on social media and then believe it without doing their own research after that. Like if I see something concerning whoever, before I even believe anything, I'll do my own research, thorough research, and not just believe anything that I see, because I feel like that's what a lot of people do, and that itself is an issue.
I was just having a conversation with one of my friends yesterday. She's a very hardcore Biden supporter. I personally do not support Biden, but that's a whole different discussion. We're not getting into that. I asked her why she liked Biden so much more than Trump, even after this election, seeing what he did, how he reacted to things. And she still couldn't give me hard facts on why she liked him. She was like, that's what she grew up with. That's what she sees on social media. She just sees everybody support him. And she doesn't know herself the facts on why she supports him. She just knows that she does. And she couldn't tell me why she didn't like Trump either. Just because everybody that she grew up around, everybody that she sees on social media, they all hate on Trump. So, psychologically and subconsciously, you're not going to like that person. And I don't want to say she's too immature, because that's kind of a mean way to put it, but she's not to the point where she wanted to do her own research. I feel like a lot of kids and young adults, teenagers, whatever you want to call them, they don't do their own research because they just believe whatever you see on social media is right. That they don't think about the bias like a lot of people do, like they should. Like they don't do their own research like you do.
Or the research that people do get is still like from social media, but it's brief research, and research that you normally wouldn't just like run off with, if that makes sense. I definitely just feel like if you do your own research about anything that you decide to take an opinion on, then it'll help with preventing further issues.
No, I agree. Like people, instead of like doing their own research, or they'll be like, oh yes, I do my own research, and they just click a hot link in somebody's profile and it leads to like a completely biased source or something that's like missing all the details. And that's why I think it's so important, especially in this day and age, to like go across the spectrum while you're doing your research, because you have to get every side of the story or else you'll never get the truth.
Yes. To add on to what you said, it's always important to get both sides of the story. So if you only have the facts to your opinion, I'm not going to say it's not valid, but you always need the other side too, so you can understand where somebody else is coming from, so it could prevent an argument. So, and essentially, if you want to learn about something and get more information about it, you don't want to like cause any arguments with something that is something you believe to be factual, because then that's going to make you look bad, and then they're probably not going to want to listen to you.
Yeah, just kind of re-say what she said, add on a little bit more. I see a lot of people that will get all their research from one site, and there's like every time they go to look something up politically or something they saw on social media, they'll always go to that same site, whether it be CNN or Fox or some other biased site, left or right. They'll keep going to that same spot. Like they'll go to Fox News every single time something new pops up. So they always get that one side only. They never go to CNN or some left-wing news site or whoever to see what they're thinking, get their point of view. They never have conversations with their friends, because I feel like in today's age, it's kind of, if you don't agree with me, don't talk to me. You're not my friend. Political conversations can't happen because they get too heated. People don't know how to kind of say what they want to say without arguing. So points never get across. People never get to learn from each other like they used to.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. Would you like to bring up any examples that you feel specifically that people or events have been misrepresented in contemporary media?
Well, obviously the easy one, COVID. I mean, I know my parents have a different political affiliation than I do. And so every day I like sit there and they have their news channel on, and then I'll go look at my own thing. And I'll like just seeing like the difference. It's being like, you'll see, let's say like Fox News, they'll be saying like, oh, this and this doctor said that apparently wearing 3 masks is no different than wearing 1 mask. Or you'll see this other side being like, it's proven that 2 masks, 3 masks are better than 1 mask. And it's just like the information is so different. And then you'll get people in public and they'll kind of like butt heads and they'll be like, no, well, I heard this from the news. And they're like, no, I heard this from the news. And at the end of the day, nobody's right and nobody knows what's going on.
To go on with that, I've seen people even like twist numbers a little bit. Like they might all have the same number, CNN, Fox, whatever. They might all have that same number, but say Fox like, well, compare this to the flu, compare this to Ebola or whatever other, virus was going around in the past that had way higher numbers. They're like, this is nothing. It's just the common cold, whatever. It's minuscule to what we've had in the past type of stuff. And then, there's guys on the other side that are like, look how many people have died. This is such a high number, which, yeah, it is. But they're like try to blow it up way more than the other guys. If that makes any sense.
I think another large issue that comes with like the whole media bias thing is it also depends on who owns different particular media, because when you have like, for example, companies like Amazon owning the Wall Street Journal or something like that can often skew media to be then more biased towards like those in power, which is oftentimes an issue. I believe like at some point there was actually a time when the Wall Street Journal opinion article had been published, actually trying to make an argument for the harsh treatment of workers with Amazon, which is like objectively wrong. However, like it makes sense considering that Amazon owns the Wall Street Journal. And I think that in this similar case, depending on who owns the media can definitely determine that. And I think that oftentimes media can be skewed to also redirect people away from those like the extremely rich and wealthy who are in power, who's oftentimes is to blame for many of the issues that we have today.
No, I completely agree, because I don't think people realize, and this is a different itself, but that the entire world is basically owned by like 10 major companies who then own every other little company. You can be like, oh, well, company A is completely from company B, but at the end of the day, they don't realize that they're owned by the same exact person. So there's just like slight things, slight tweaks in every single maybe media company that people are completely different, but like they really don't, like they can't do it really, because at the end of the day, they're owned by the same person.
Yeah, to add on about the whole social media topic, I don't know how true it is. I haven't looked into the numbers. I'm just giving an example of what I've heard. But I've heard of TikTok banning more right-wing, outspeaking political figures, more so than left-wing. I don't know. Obviously, I haven't looked into the numbers. I don't know how true that is. Just going on based on what I've heard. But giving the idea that it is true, and we're just going to give that a thought, give that some humor for a second. Given the fact it could be true, that's very important, because the younger population, younger groups, that's where they get all of their media from. They don't go on CNN or Fox, or they don't go to the news. They go to TikTok and they happen to scroll past something that hates on Trump or loves Trump or something along those lines. And that forces them to think a certain way because all these popular people are thinking of that. So if they did ban more right-wing people, they would force them to go more left side, or vice versa. If they were banning more left-wing people, it'd force them to go more right side because that's what they're surrounded by.
I kind of just after Cami said, I was just kind of saying how corporate America kind of just runs everything, and it's kind of just like how like America's just kind of based and built on like the capitalist kind of like mindset kind of.
I think another thing also having to do with like the whole like TikTok banning the right wing, like commentators or creators or whatever, versus left wing is because many a times the people who are like explaining left wing ideologies or left wing ideals are not even remotely comparable to the amount of harm and damage that right wing people have done to like different oppressed groups and people of color, minorities, etc. Because so many of them will skew people into things like the alt-right pipeline or use certain dog whistles to attract people into, becoming further and further right until they're at a point where there is really no turning back. And I think there also becomes a different point where many people make the argument, well, when you go so far radical on one side or the other, it becomes the same thing. But the issue is, I don't think somebody wanting like liberation for people of color is comparable to somebody wanting to genocide an entire race because they believe that they came from superior alien races or some other example, thing like that.
I 100% see where you're coming from, but I don't think that's a valid argument because obviously being radical on either side is just as bad. Being a radical right is just as bad as being a radical left, and vice versa. There's obviously good that comes from either side, depending on obviously your views. But if we want to look back in time, like the KKK was established by the Democrats. Hitler was a Democrat. But obviously there's bad things that come from the right side as well. There's bad people on either side. So I don't think saying that the right side has caused more harm is a fair argument. Because they both have ideologies that do help different people in different ways.
Firstly, I would say that the whole Democrat argument with the KKK, yes, the KKK was started by the Democrats. However, there's still like tons of historical evidence that shows a party switch based off of different policies presented by both parties that eventually caused people with more left-wing like ideas to move to the Democrat Party, and then also people with more right wing to move to the Republican Party. And that's something that a lot of people say, oh, well, it was started by the Democrats. But the thing is, if you look at Democrats today, those Democrats are not aligned with the KKK. The KKK are supporting Republican politicians and candidates, and also the argument that Hitler was a Democrat doesn't really make sense. One, because Democrats were not, a party in Nazi Germany. And also, like, Hitler's own ideology, being a fascist, is something that's like isolated. Like, that's a completely different ideology. And also, Democrat is more of a political party than it even is an ideology. Like, it's an affiliation to a particular, organization more than it is a set of ideals, because just as Republicans are more of, someone being related to the GOP or whatever than being a set, of ideals. Like, there's different ideologies, but they can all identify under the same party. Like how there's definitely plenty of moderate right Republicans, just as there are fascist Republicans, or just as many as there are, quote unquote Democratic Socialists, Democrats, as there are moderate Democrats.
I'd like to kind of interject right here. This seems uncomfortable Like it just straight up does. Like it kind of seems like it's devolving into I believe this and I believe that. Let's lean into that. It sounds weird, right? Let's lean into it. No, but like that's really what I want to get into is like, okay, not necessarily how can we come to the middle ground, but why do I believe this and why do I believe that? So kind of what I'm hearing from you, Matt, is that there's bias on either sides. And so when I'm looking at this political polarization chart, you can see quite clearly that there are biased sources on either sides. And what you're saying, Quinn, is that there's often dangerous misinformation being dispelled on one side. And so can we kind of go into maybe why that might be? Or do you believe that exists, Matt, at all?
I just like to say I wasn't bringing up the KKK and Hitler to really blame the left side at all, or like push them like on them to say they were a part of it. I was just more giving an example of the fact that there are dangerous people or what's the word, like very negative groups. I'll say it like that. Very negative groups of people on either side. There's bad people on the left side. There's bad people on the right side. That's just a fact. There's gonna be bad people no matter where you are, politically, socially, everything. Each party has their own sets of goals on who to help. The right party more so on the heart, like the blue collar side of America, working class type of deal. The left side on their own people, like their own set of groups. Everybody's trying to help a specific set of groups because unfortunately you can't really help everybody at once. You gotta go a little bit by a little bit. If you want to help the poverty, you got to raise the taxes, which is going to make the blue collar group hurt a little bit more. No matter what, somebody's gonna be hurting a little bit. So I think.
My bad.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. I feel as that's limited idea of what we mean when we say, like helping people, because you can help everybody. Obviously, like there are like going to be like the few left out. Like for example, like, and also the whole like idea of just raising taxes on the rich, I personally don't believe is enough. I think there's definitely more like that could go into it. And I think that, for example, obviously there's working class Republicans just as there are working class Democrats. However, all of them fall under the working class regardless of political affiliation. However, policies that would help the working class in general help people regardless of political affiliation, therefore helping in this situation everybody.
Right. I wasn't trying to say like all working class are Republicans or Democrats have no working class, or I wasn't trying to say that at all. I apologize if it came off like that, but I was just saying like I grew up very low middle class my entire life, kind of skating by, but I always knew I was going to have food type of deal. Like we had enough food to get by, but not enough to share type of deal. Like if whoever the president, Obama at the time, would have raised the taxes in order to open up free healthcare more and free college and things of that nature to help the poverty, that would have hurt my family more because we might not have been able to afford as much food or the gas required for my dad to get to work because he drove 45 minutes every single day. And then, but yeah, that would help them, but it could hurt my family. Or vice versa, you lower the taxes to help my family and then they get less benefits. That makes sense.
I feel like in those situations, it's kind of hard to play on both sides and do something that it'll help you. I don't know. I just feel like there's no way that you can make it to where it can be beneficial for both, because either way, at the end of the day, somebody's going to have the downside of something. And most of the time, I definitely think it's the lower class or lower middle class area. But I agree with you. I feel like definitely now my family, I would say we're in the, I don't know. We're making it by. I'm not gonna say we're all the way lower class because we're still pretty fortunate, and I'm thankful for everything that I have. But just from seeing their struggle from being in the working class, it is definitely hard to make your way up into being able to be a part of the class where you can you don't have to apply for financial help and all the other financial aid stuff. So yeah.
I'm gonna agree with Lauren here, and also Matt, like what you said, like everybody has different opinions across all the spectrums, even across the classes, and that kind of connects. Lauren said, like, you can't help everyone at once, and I think that's like, I guess, like people call it like an American value, and it's sacrifice, and you are going to have to. Some people are going to have to hurt before everybody can get better, and sometimes some people have to make a bit more of a sacrifice, other people don't, and at the end of the day, it is going to be very hard to try to get everybody happy and everything they want to help them in their financial situations or home situations and stuff like that.
And it kind of brings this full circle to how we were talking about like the government in America being ran by those big businesses. I think the lower and middle class, poverty level, although pretty much throughout the middle class, kind of gets the short end of the stick because those rich people, those high business owners, pretty much run the government. So they get to kind of bend the rules and pick what goes on to benefit them, and not so much that lower middle class that they don't have to worry about because they're not in their lives.
I definitely agree with that because I feel like a lot of the government decisions that are made that would affect everybody really benefits people that are higher class, and then everybody else gets the lower end of the stick, like you said.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think in the sense of like the people who are, in the bourgeois class, like are able to like, control, and do as many things as they want. Like they give us these, limited amounts of like taste of equality or some sort of help or relief for just a split second while they sit there and continue to just thrive off of our labor and our efforts and everything like that.
I obviously don't have any proof of this, but I think we've all seen like somebody, the higher class do something wrong, like illegal, that the normal citizen would get put in jail for the rest of their life, like trafficking, human trafficking. Many rich people have been caught doing this and it just kind of gets swept under the rug because I bet behind the counter is like, hey, I'll side you a couple mil for your little foundation, your little organization if you just make it go away. And businesses and the government's like, yeah, a couple mil. I can do a lot with a couple mil. I can help myself, help my business, do whatever I gotta do. So I feel like that stuff happens a lot.
I feel like in that situation, it's fair to say that the government would do will do whatever they can to keep themselves afloat. Because I definitely feel like that happens way more than shown. But yeah, forgot what else I was gonna. I know I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. It'll come back.
No, Matt, I definitely agree with you. And I know a lot of people are like critique when this is said. And obviously there are outliers. There's always outliers in like any probability, but the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And it's because the rich abuse the poor all the time, even though the are the ones that fully keep our economy afloat. Because who's working for the rich? Who's working for the bigger business? It's the smaller people. And it's just like something like that. It's like you said, like, oh, we'll slide you some money under the table. And for them, it's just like a flick of the wrist, nothing. But for the smaller people, it's something so big, but then it can like kind of ruin them a bit because then they have this attachment to like, oh, if I do this one thing, maybe I can get a little more out of it. And then at the end of the day, the big guy kind of destroys the small guy.
Not even like politically or economically, but like, let's throw this idea out there. Imagine, let's just list off some very popular actors and actresses like Adam Sandler, Ryan Reynolds, people of that such as The Rock, Kevin Hart. Imagine if they were to get caught with human trafficking. I don't think they do. I have no way to believe that or any proof. I'm just spitting off names. But imagine if they got caught doing it. Imagine just how much that would hurt America and just, ourselves who grew up watching their movies, thinking of them as, some people think of them as father figures if they didn't have one, or people that they look up to. Imagine just how much that messed them up. So I feel like the government also thinks about that, helps make some things go away to make them seem more perfect.
Well, I feel like one thing that we kind of have to understand is like there's always going to be like that class divide and those two party sides. I mean, if you just look at the government itself, the Senate is 50 Republican, 50 Democrat. I mean, it is the makeup of America. And I think that's the problem where the media comes in and it only shows people the one side that they believe that that is what has the more support when really both sides have equal support. And I think that's the issue with America is that we're in such a deadlock between both sides that no compromises are being made. And that's what's really holding us as a society back.
No, exactly. Like people are more focused on trying to prove that they're right than find a compromise. And like you said, like that's really just killing us.
I think that kind of circles back to what I said earlier about people only hearing from one side and then being afraid almost to have these open conversations and hear from different people. And they automatically get upset anytime like you're wrong. And they don't want to listen to them and get their viewpoints and listen to what they have to say.
I think a lot of times in that situation, a lot of people don't want to be wrong, and a lot of people don't want to hear that they're wrong, which also creates a problem because I feel like if we all have some type of opinion that we stand strong on, we should all be able to humble ourselves and be able to listen to somebody that has a different side of the story. Not necessarily saying that you have to always take their side, but sometimes if you do listen, you could be like, maybe they are right, or maybe I'll think about it, and digest the situation, and maybe you might come to terms with a new idea.
This relates back, sorry. This relates like completely back to what Matt said, like, I don't know how long ago. And he was like, oh, I don't want to sound rude by calling someone immature. But like, I'll say it straight up. If someone's immature, they're immature. Like people have to grow and people have to understand that. And like Lauren, what you just said, it's the immaturity that doesn't let people like communicate as adults or communicate as basic human beings, but rather as kind of more simple-minded, unable to like talk. It's just, oh, fight like a child.
That is why we're unable to have a decent conversation with people that have different views, because I feel like everybody always gets defensive before they can like sit down and be like, okay, in this conversation, I'm going to be open. I'm going to be listening to other people. And instead of, okay, I don't care what anybody else says, I'm right, they're wrong. I feel like that happens a lot nowadays. Like it's really hard to get a good amount of people together that have different viewpoints on something and not have it end in an argument, which is why I feel like a lot of political, social issues, a whole lot of issues aren't being solved because nobody wants to have that conversation. Like that conversation about anything that deals with people's lives and a whole bunch of other stuff is going to be hard. But if we can humble ourselves and be the people that we need to be in order to make that change, then it can happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna circle this back to like TikTok, because right now that's like the biggest social media platform that young people use. TikTok does such a great job at showing you exactly what you like to see. If you only watch videos that say puppies are demonic, right? Throwing that out there just because it's not a thing. I don't think it is. But like, if you only watch videos that say puppies are demonic, in your head, you're like, dude, there's so many people that back me up. This has to be true. I've seen this person, this person, this person, this person, and this person all say that is true. No. Sorry about that. My roommate. Yeah, he did. But they're like, all these people are believing me, so it has to be true. And they don't see the whole other side because TikTok doesn't show it to them, because TikTok only wants to show you the videos that you want to see. It only shows, obviously only shows what you want to see, like I just said. But it doesn't show you the flip side at all. It doesn't show you the people that like puppies and think they're great. So people never really get the chance to expand their mind. They think all these people back me up and all these people believe the same thing I do. So that's got to be the majority of people. That's the only people I see. So it's got to be the majority, which means I have to be right. There's no other way around it.
That's why I always say that the media has a creative way to try to persuade not persuade, but the media has a creative way in keeping somebody in the same mindset, like the same fixed mindset, which is why I have a love-hate relationship with social media, just because it can be dangerous, but it can also be helpful when needed. But I feel like 9 times more so on the dangerous side. But if it's used correctly, it can be beneficial. I definitely don't think TikTok is on the beneficial side. Well, I don't know, because what you said, can you guys hear me? What you said, Matt, about like the dangerous puppy things, yeah, that is true, because if you keep liking the same like feed over and over again, that's all you're gonna see. But so that's why I feel like TikTok is not like, which I feel like TikTok is definitely a big platform that people use to base a lot of opinions off of, because even I admit that I have I have seen like some stuff on TikTok. I'm like, oh wait, like, should I believe that? And then like, I was like, wait, let me do my research first, because it's so believable, because I'm seeing it over and over again. And yeah.
To bounce off of what you were saying, obviously, I believe that all social media is helpful whenever it comes to politics if you use it the right way. Like, I can go watch something on TikTok and be like, puppies are demonic. I'm like, really? Okay. I've never heard that before. Let me go over to my computer, do a couple of little Google searches, click on a few different websites, see what they got to say. Like, well, these people think that puppies are demonic, but these people think that puppies are great. Why do each party believe this? Do my own research, find out what I think, versus what a lot of people do. Puppies are demonic. Well, they're right. They're on TikTok. They know what they're talking about. They wouldn't be saying it if they didn't.
No, I agree. And like what you said, social media is very valuable because of the fast pace that we share and look at. I mean, like you said, like look at TikTok. It's like 15 seconds per video. You can watch, say, 4 videos a minute. I don't know math, but then like you said, this also connects to things like performative activism, and people like they just see something on their feed and they're like, oh my gosh, like this must be true, and then they repost it and then other people are seeing it, and obviously it's a chain reaction, and they're like, oh my gosh, this must be true, blah blah blah. And you said yourself that you go out and you're like, okay, I see this, let me go research it. But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't even give the time of day to even read a caption that's underneath the post. They just see the post and they go. That's why I think it's also extremely toxic in carrying ideas through social media.
To go off what you were just saying, I think it is toxic because a lot of people don't think the fact that they don't know who posted that video. I can go on TikTok right now, act like I'm some PhD having college student that knows everything to know about everything. And some 10-year-old would believe me. And you'd be like, yeah, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about, but I could be talking about German culture. I've never been in Germany. I don't know anything about it, but I could say I do. I could say I spent 25 years in Germany. He would never know. But nobody thinks about that stuff. They don't want to think too deep. They're just like right off the screen. But yes, he knows exactly what he's talking about. And they don't know who they're listening to.
I definitely think the younger generation will be very misled because TikTok, well, when I was younger, we didn't have, well, I'm sure we're all around the same age. So when we were all younger, we didn't have anything like TikTok to be able to mislead us like this. But they're literally like 5-year-old, like not 5-year-olds. Well, yeah, 5-year-olds, 12-year-olds, like kids that are so young that have TikTok. And I guarantee you they're seeing videos that will already have them forming an opinion that they have like they know nothing about. And so obviously they're gonna go around like, oh, I know about this, or I believe this and that. And it's like stuff that like they have no clue about. And yeah, so I definitely hope that, I feel like we all have the potential to be the generation of change because we've already made so many changes, like social changes, like for example, with pronouns and gender and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I definitely feel like we can be the generation of change and be that role model for the younger generation to do the research. Yeah.
I think there's so many like kids are getting so, like into politics so much earlier and they're maturing so much faster because of social media. Like I remember I was 12 years old. I did not care about anything except sports and my friends. That is it. Then you see these 12-year-olds out here doing, TikTok dances, twerking, and doing their makeup, and talking about fuck Trump or fuck Biden. Like they don't know anything about it, but they saw this guy on TikTok or this girl on TikTok talking about it, and they're like, yeah, that's a good looking dude, or that's a good looking girl. They got a lot of followers. So obviously I should believe what they're doing because a lot of people do, but they don't know. And obviously they're maturing a lot faster, which kids are maturing at a ridiculous rate now, an unhealthy rate, I would even say, worrying about politics when they're 9, 10 years old, when they can't even vote for another decade or 8 years or whatever.
Matt, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree a little. That I feel like you're saying that kids are maturing a lot faster, and I don't necessarily think that's true. I think they are maturing in a way of, oh, they're trying to act cool. It's like when you would see like a cool teenager on the street when you were like, I want to be them, and they're dressing their appearance and they're like trying to talk smart and all of this, but I don't think they fully grasp the concept to the state of maturity that you're talking about. And I also do believe that it is a bit important to get into politics, or at least not even, you don't even have to like look at political parties, just like set your own morals and your own ideals sort of from like start of puberty through your like teen life, because I think it is important to set that basis, because I mean we turn 18 and we can vote, and I feel like that's very early. Obviously it's like whatever, but if you think about it, it's like right now, I mean at least for me. And this also, I'm going to go back to what Lauren was saying about how like kids are on social media and about our like we're the generation of change. And I feel like at this point I feel like there's like an age gap of change, because there's like older people, let's say they're like late 20s, early 30s, they already like grew up with this different mindset. And then the kids that you're talking about that are on TikTok now, they're like 9 years old, blah, blah, blah. And they're being exposed to this stuff, but they didn't get to go through the change of exposure. They are like thrown directly into the exposure. And I feel like our age range right here that like Brian brought us all together, this group, I feel like this is the true group that went from we knew nothing to we developed and evolved through everything that's going on. And now we're in a new like state of the world, I guess.
Let me start by apologizing. I didn't mean they were maturing like mentally. No, you're good. I'm apologizing because I didn't portray what I was thinking correctly. They are not maturing mentally, but they're more like trying to force themselves to mature. Like obviously their brains aren't developing any faster than ours did, but they're trying to force themselves along that path, and they're worrying about things that they necessarily shouldn't be worrying about. Like they don't need to worry about who the president is. Obviously, I agree heavily that they need to start setting their own morals, values, learn who themselves are, and learn what they believe in. But don't worry about what Joe Biden or Trump believes in, because those guys are not going to be running most likely by the time that they get to the point where they can vote. So I wouldn't worry about that stress or that drama per se, because there was a lot of drama. At least I saw a lot of it, especially during the Joe Biden Trump election. There's a lot of drama. If you like Trump, don't talk to me. If you don't like Biden, don't talk to me type of stuff. They don't need to be worrying about that stuff at such a young age, because then that stuff, don't talk to me if you support them or them, whatever. That's where that stuff comes from, is because they're not mature enough to fully wrap their heads around it, and they jumped into it too early, and they're not mature enough to realize, hey, I could be wrong. Maybe I don't know everything type of mindset.
All right, so I guess I'll chime in. Y'all have just kind of blown me away with the conversation I've just been able to, listen to. I want to cap it off with one last question. I know we got school tomorrow for most of us, so we got a place to be. Number one, I'd like to ask you about media reform, and I love this social media conversation. Maybe we could continue down that thread. But about media reform, do you think it's possible? Do you have a certain way of envisioning it? Is it necessary at all? Do you blame media companies or do you blame individuals for the litany of misinformation? Discuss.
I do not. Well, yeah, no, I don't think media reform is possible, just because I feel like the media profits off of people, like the media profits off of different things, and I definitely feel like people coming on there just to like argue about stuff, that brings in views, and for them, like, that's money. So media reform, I want to say it's possible, but I don't think it is. Yeah.
I feel like media reform, like really, like the only way you could do it, the only possibility is almost like in like a indoctrination way, which is why it's not like plausible, almost like a North Korea type situation where everyone is fed the exact same information. However, that's where you get in the leading to skewing to one side or the other and having complete control, which is what America is not about. So that's why I really feel like the media reform is really hard, because it's not plausible in an American ideal. Because no matter what, the media reflects still American people's thinking.
And then also, like, even say even if there was like a doctrine that would help with the media reform, so people wouldn't be able to freely express their, they probably wouldn't be able to freely express their opinions through social media. So it would happen some other way, whether that maybe it'll be a whole nother new platform is created just for that, which would create another problem. Or, I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like it's not possible.
No, I have to, sorry, Matt. I have to agree with that. Obviously, like having media reform kind of a complete violation of our First Amendment rights. And then like what Loudin said, we just kind of if we do get that reform, what's it going to look like? The person who is in power completely affect what that state of media looks like. So we would get a change of our media reform every 4 years. And then everyone will just be kind of thrown into chaos. And I'm going to go to the second part of your question, Bryant, about kind of who's, I don't know if you said fault, was it? I'm not sure if that's what you said, but I guess who's whose influence it is with media, I would have to say parents. And I know that's a little iffy of a subject because people are like, oh, I'm a great parent, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like what Lauren said earlier about how we grew up and about how, like what Matt said, that we weren't thinking about this and that when we were 12 years old. And it's because we didn't like social media influence when we were 12. We didn't have like, at least I didn't when I was 12, I didn't have a phone. And I feel like kids these days, parents are kind of like throwing a tablet in their face to keep them occupied. And then that gives them like a gateway to download social media and to download this and that. And I feel like it's a parent's responsibility to kind of give some morals to their child so that they can develop on that. But I feel like there's a disconnection between parents' attentiveness to their children and they're giving their kids an iPad and calling it a day. And I feel like that's a big problem with media and with the generations growing up.
I completely agree. I didn't know where you were going with the whole parent thing, but that's a great point to bring up. You know, the fact that a lot of kids don't really get to be kids like the way we were and the way our parents were going outside and playing baseball or running, playing whatever, doing whatever outside. They didn't get to do that, or they don't do that because they're glued to these screens, seeing way more than they're mature to see. Like maturity level allows them to comprehend. But I think there's more to blame other than just the parents, obviously. It all depends on what social media platform you're talking about specifically to talk about examples. But, you know, we're going to go back to TikTok because I still think it's probably the most important one as of right now. So like the fact that they could be banning more right-wing or left-wing speakers, that is a big fault at their hands. Obviously, if they're banning more right-wing, the youth doesn't get to see that, or if they're banning more left-wing, same thing. Nobody gets to see that, so they don't see that perspective and they get pushed the other way. But it also could be the creator's fault. The creators being very forceful about it, saying, I am right, you know, not encouraging somebody to do your own research. Like I've seen a lot of creators, they're like, this is what I believe. Don't believe it though. Take this knowledge, go do your own research. And that's the type of creators that we need, that try to push you to do your own research, get your own opinions, instead of pushing exactly what they think word for word onto you or the viewer.
And with that, I think that's a wonderful closing sentiment. Again, I want to thank all y'all for your time. Y'all got a place to be, things to do, people to see, and whatnot. So I'm gonna leave you with this. Thank you to you for your time. Thank you to the Share Your Voice community for supporting St. Louis artists.